And I'm gonna hit this ball with a banana. Look at this. Ah, nuts. Hey, Stuart, what are your thoughts on tariffs? Tariffs, which are specifically taxes on imports. Tariffs. What are your thoughts, Stuart? I mean, this game I'm playing, this comes from Nintendo. Both the game and the system, they were made in Japan. These are imports. Now, I didn't personally import the stuff. I imagine someone imported the Nintendo Wii U that I'm playing on. And the Mario Super Sluggers, all made in Japan. But what if the president decided, hey, you know what? Oh, got it over me. What if he decided, you know, we need to protect American jobs by taxing you. We want to discourage you from buying these video games and video game systems from Japan. You should be buying from American companies like Microsoft, which makes the Xbox. Oh, what a throw. Out at first from the outfield. Trump likes them, so they must be good. I'm tired of having this debate about tariffs with MAGAs. Because it's amazing. They always pivot on this issue whenever you correct them. I don't know about you guys, but I remember watching Donald Trump's campaign launch when it happened. And I remember him during that speech talking about how if Ford decides to build a factory in Mexico, then he's going to impose a tax, a tariff. He says, "Oh, you can build that factory in Mexico, but if you want to ship those the cars made in that factory, if you want to bring those to the United States, you're going to have to pay a tax." And he said, you know, and after Ford begs me to not tax them, they'll eventually build that plant in the United States, thereby creating American jobs. That was a mess. So the whole reason why, the main reason why Trump imposes tariffs is an attempt to protect and encourage businesses to stay in the United States, so to speak, and create more American jobs. That's the reason. That was the reason from the start. Now, this is nonsense, both in theory and in practice. Henry Hazlitt talks about this in his book, Economics in One Lesson, which you can find for free online. And this doesn't work in practice either. And we know this from the history of the Great Depression, when Herbert Hoover, also a businessman turned politician who ran for president, thought he could manage the economy. Yeah, kids, you know, all that nonsense you've heard your entire life about how Herbert Hoover was a hands-off president and how the Great Depression was caused by capitalism run amok, and that when the stock market crashed, Herbert Hoover just said, well, we'll let the free market figure itself out. No, Herbert Hoover was pretty hands-on. And one thing he did was he signed the smoot-hawley tariff, which was aimed at protecting American jobs. Bring those jobs back to America. Of course, what happened was this increased production costs in America because a lot of factories rely on imports. A lot of American factories and plants rely on imported materials in order to make cars or steel beams or whatever they're making. And additionally, American companies rely on foreign markets. And while this is not always a guarantee, it's usually a result of raising tariffs. When you raise tariffs, other countries that you trade with will impose retaliatory tariffs. And that's what happened during the Great Depression after Smoot-Hawley. Other countries imposed tariffs in response to the United States. And American farmers, especially, lost overseas markets. And so a lot of farmers in America went under. And when that happened, a lot of banks that were tied to these farms, they went under, and it was just a chain reaction. So anyway, we know this imposing tariffs does not create or bring back American jobs. Come on. And so when you dispel this myth to a magatard who thinks that corporate tax cuts, those are great for the economy, but taxes on imports, oh, that's somehow different. But then they'll pivot. This is what I find infuriating. Then they'll pivot. Then they'll say something like, oh, well, we have a trade deficit, which is a dumb concept. Which is it's a pretty Marxist way of thinking about economics, trade deficits. You know, if you trade something in exchange for something and it's win-win, well, they say, well, actually, you're being exploited. You're at a trade deficit. Because when I trade, $300 for a brand new Wii U system, actually, again, that's a terrible. Why do I keep using that example? Like this Diet Coke. I go to the store, I buy a Diet Coke for $1, usually a single can. But you can also buy a 12-pack of Diet Coke for probably $4. So you'd probably think, well, that can of Diet Coke, when you buy it alone, it's $1, but you can buy the 12-pack for like $4 or $5. So you're actually getting ripped off when you buy the single, buy the one. So that's a trade deficit in their eyes. But it's not, because in the moment, if I'm on the go, if I'm just stopping by a gas station, say during a road trip, and I buy a Diet Coke, I want that refreshment. In the moment, I value the Diet Coke more than I value the $1 in my pocket, because what I want in the moment is a refreshment while I'm driving on a road trip. Rather have that than the $1 in my pocket. But again, I'm operating at a trade deficit when I do that. So then you dispel that myth, the whole dumb concept of trade deficits. Then they pivot again when you bring that up. Then they say, oh, well, China is stealing our intellectual property, so we need to impose tariffs. Okay, well, and then you ask, well, then why does Trump often propose that we impose tariffs on EU countries and South American countries and countries like Canada? Because he has. Oh, home run time. I said there would be dingers. Yes! The game couldn't figure out if they made it on time, but I did. Let's see that replay. I promised dingers, and I delivered. See, look at that. That dinger was so hot, I bent time and space So then you dispel the myth about whether or not it's over intellectual property, and they just pivot all over the place whenever you argue with them about tariffs. At least I lit that alligator on fire. It's also amazing how a lot of these conservatives and magatards, I remember before Trump was elected, they, whenever someone would credit Obama, the Obama administration, for decreasing unemployment, then they would turn into Austrian economists, these magatards and conservatives. They would say, oh yeah, but what about the workforce participation rate? We don't know if that's a good actual indicator of unemployment because the workforce participation rate is really low. But now, but now that the unemployment rate is going down even more under Trump, which I'm sure is temporary, as we know, this is economy hot potato. Well, then they say, oh, well, it's because of Trump's brilliant economic planning and his tax cuts. That's what. That's why we have record unemployment. Or the stock market. The stock market was going up under Obama, especially his second term. And then a lot of these magatards and conservatives would say, well, the stock market's not always a good indicator of economic health. Crap. Not to mention the stock market is distorted, partly or largely due to quantitative easing measures and the Federal Reserve and all that stuff. All these distortions in the economy. Yeah, magatards and conservatives, when that was happening under Obama, they'd make a big fuss like, oh, well, we shouldn't put too much emphasis on the stock market. What are you, crazy? And it's distorted anyway. But then it happens under Trump. Then it's because of Trump's brilliant economic planning. See this a lot from Charlie Kirk. Uh-oh. Boom! It's one thing to be illiterate and ignorant of economics, but the sense I get is that a lot of these conservatives and magatards, a lot of them are actually pretty educated on economics, and they're pretty literate, relatively speaking. So I think it's worse than ignorant. They're dishonest. Struck me out. What's going on in the comment? The chat is up. It's lit. How's it hanging, Kirk? I'm doing good, Cladu. Sleepy Sith Lord in the house as well. Alright, yeah, just a bunch of stuff about tariffs. Yeah, China's stealing our IP, so Americans should pay more for imports. What logic? Got him with the banana. Kirk, men stand. The broken window fallacy does not apply when my political party is breaking the windows. That's a good analogy, Stuart. Speaking of which, did you know Harry Binswanger? Harry Binswanger, who is this, he's one of the leading intellectuals within the objectivist movement, was a student of Ayn Rand. He apparently is the heir to the Binswanger glass fortune, which was made during the Reconstruction era, after the Civil War. So Harry Binswanger's family got rich from the Reconstruction era because they were they made a lot of money selling windows, new windows to buildings that needed to be built. So I wonder if Harry Binswanger believes in the broken window fallacy. I'm sure he doesn't. I just think it's a funny coincidence. Heck, I found that out on Wikipedia, so... But there is a glass company called Binswanger Glass. Alright, banana time. Ah, got me! Alright, 2-run lead, folks. You thought the artificial intelligence was finally gonna get me this game. But artificial intelligence is no match for real intelligence, baby.